Are you living by your own discipline, or do your emotions dictate your life policy? You know, one of the best things we can do for ourselves is to acknowledge that we have instincts to misbehave. And it's a challenge to keep it together 100% of the time. Like, I don't know anybody who can do that, myself included. I'm just not that good. But there's very little benefit for us to be strangers to the truth about who we are as individuals. We may not always give into the impulse, but that little animal inside of us is, man, sometimes just dying to bust out of the cage and wreck shop and just misbehave. And I think what's crazy is that sometimes it can be fun to let that little bastard come out and play every once in a while. And speaking of which, mine came close to coming out a couple of days ago in Starbucks. And I'll just kind of give the cliff notes of this, of the story and this little encounter. But it was a perfect storm, man. I was hungry, in a rush, had somewhere to go, and another customer comes in, and this guy was being a pharmaceutical grade asshole. No joke. The dude comes in, and as I'm trying to order, this guy was on his phone talking loud. He was talking so loud that the cashier and I couldn't hear each other talk. We couldn't complete a simple transaction like customer telling the cashier what they wanted. It was so hard. And I was itching to tell the guy, like, yo, man, please, like, do you mind keeping your voice down? But I knew that I wasn't in the right mental space to really interact with other people. And I knew that I probably wouldn't phrase it in the most polite way. And that also means that he could have gotten an attitude, and I know I wouldn't have been happy about that. So I said, you know what, I'm just not going to say anything, nothing. And let me tell you how annoyed I was. A Tyrannosaurus Rex could have crashed through the Starbucks window with his giant head and started eating this guy alive, and I would have not felt the least bit sorry for him. That's how pissed off I was. Harsh? Yeah. Whatever. I didn't care at that time. So I'm sure you can relate with other, social interactions that annoy you and piss you off. But like just, in the general spectrum of interactions, I'm assuming, and I'm probably sure you too have impulses to, to just kind of act out. Maybe you want to smash things in the heat of anger, make inappropriate comments, whatever. It's normal. We're all human. Luckily, most of us don't follow through with that, or else, as I said before, there's just, complete and utter chaos, like in the social space. But having said that, we gotta remember nuance and distinguish between low-stake interactions and more serious moments that could really negatively impact our lives. And this is kind of where things get sticky, when we lose our filters and we lose our discipline and our inhibitions fall down during higher stake moments. And I don't think there's much of a mystery of where this can lead to. And it runs the gamut from anywhere from physical confrontations, or in a sexual manner, unwanted pregnancies when we're not thinking clearly, STDs. If you're out driving, a little road rage can lead to some very tragic moments. I think we've seen on the news and heard secondhand from other people. But yeah, these things can lead to life-changing consequences if we're not careful. And one of the most harmful explanations I've heard for these behaviors is when people just kind of chalk it up and say, well, it's just my personality. That's just how I am. I'm like, huh? Okay. Or you hear this other one, like, I don't know, well, I'm bitchy because it's that time of the month and I'm on my cycle. I'm all right. Or just sort of on the male spectrum, you hear shit like, well, that dude insulted my manhood, so I had to fight him. I had to punch him. And it really begs a question of why do people treat bad tendencies and misbehaviors like it's a blank check or some get out of being an asshole card for free. Like, I really wonder about that sometimes. So if you've been following the podcast this far, you probably know where I'm leading to next. So we get into the misconnection and kind of dive to where people may be wrong about this, or how they may have like a really altered perception of reality. And I think the misconnection, or where people get it wrong, is that because these are natural impulses, that some people feel it's fine for these behaviors to manifest themselves through regular interactions. And taking it a step further, I think some of us chalk these misbehaviors up to being an extension of our personality, or genders, or our race, or how we were socialized, whatever. And a thing that might be missed, like, look, man, it's easy to blame your biology for your shortcomings. It's easy to blame your biology for your bullshit. But, your biology doesn't have some representative or a lawyer on retainer to call you on it and defend itself. You can just make accusations and excuses left and right with nobody to defend that point. And looking at myself, when I think back, like when these things happen, I kind of think back to my own childhood. And I don't know if I mentioned it before, but I grew up in a pretty rough and violent neighborhood as a young man. So some of the stakes in dealing with my own personal behavior were very, very clear. And I learned at a very early age that if I didn't control my mouth and or my actions, it could cost myself, my friends, or my family members bodily harm, without getting too graphic. And anecdotally, I saw firsthand what happened to young men and women that didn't control their emotions. So if you're wondering what the cost was, well, shit, it's pretty simple. The cost, people will land in prison, or there's some kind of drug addiction or death, or you get beat down, you get shot, you get stabbed, you get cracked in the head with a bottle. And there were many people willing to do this as casual as giving somebody a handshake. So for me, this was the beginning of life's classroom on managing my emotions. And it's not how I would have chosen to learn those life lessons, but nonetheless, that's how it happened. But for me, it continues to be a lifelong task. And I hope the same for you good people also. And even kind of as a side note, one of my parents had a bad temper, and I inherited that as a young man. I was quiet, but I was a little mean motherfucker sometimes. It's funny when I think about it. It's funny now. But even today, sometimes as an evolved man, or I think as an evolved man, I'm not at my best, and I don't necessarily want to be a good person. And there are times where I definitely do not want to be the better person. I don't. But I have to force myself to sometimes. So let's sort of, rearrange things and reconnect the dots on this. So listen up. Being who or what you are is a statement of fact. It is not a good reason to let any of your misbehaviors or bad tendencies to go unchecked. And when we're talking about our conduct in romantic relationships or at your job or whatever, you don't necessarily know where people will draw the line with you and your bullshit. And they may decide to take action on you, not deal with you, fire you, not date you, whatever the case may be. And the fact that these traits are a part of you won't make your social sins any less offensive to the people affected by them. They're not gonna wanna hear that shit. But what it really boils down to, what the bottom line is is you're not managing your DNA properly. Your DNA is managing you. So it's another case of the tail wagging the dog in these moments. And certain attributes can very well be hard-coded in your DNA. I mean, you can't help that. You were born who you were, and we didn't get to choose our genes and our personality traits and our appearance or whatever. But if they are, okay, then you may have some unhealthy sexual urges. Or you might be naturally hot-tempered or snarky or bitchy or a wise ass. Like, all that may be out of your control. You didn't build your own biology. But the burden is still on you to regulate your emotions. And in some weird kind of way, it always reminds me of one of those little badass kids running around in the supermarket. You've seen them. You have this little badass kid running around in the supermarket pulling cereal boxes off shelves, throwing tantrums when their parents should be in charge and regulating them. But they're not. So you figure out who you are in that little shitty analogy or scenario I put together. Are you the parent or are you that little kid? And yes, it takes effort to check ourselves. But I want to say something really important to keep in mind. When we're talking about poor impulse control, remember this. Prisons, hospitals, the unemployment office, divorce courts, cemeteries, these places all have one thing in common. They are full of people who couldn't, wouldn't, and didn't manage their fucking DNA. They didn't manage their emotions. And unless you have a serious medical challenge where you might need some medication or some kind of therapy, you don't have to be a slave to it. You don't. And no matter how little you may think of yourself, you're a fascinating organism. You are a fucking walking miracle. When you break down, the human anatomy and the mind and all that shit, no matter how little you may think of yourself, you are a fascinating organism. And we as humans, I think we're something like a combination of a computer system and a chemistry lab. And I say computer system because our brains are like little operating systems that are running software. And I say chemistry lab because, we're full of billions of organic matter. So I'm saying all this to say that you can rewire yourself for better social choices through mindfulness and practice. It just takes a little bit of time. You got to work at it. And where you at or where you are, that's where you are. You just got to start from there and then build your way towards a better existence. You fix your mind and the body will follow. And when the body and the mind are in harmony, your relationship with the world changes for the better. People respond accordingly to that. I've said that before. So let me try to help. If this is you and you need some kind of help or just some feedback on it, so here's what you need to do. Let's not kid ourselves and instead acknowledge your shitty tendencies or your shortcomings and your misbehaviors. Because what you have going on with yourself is really personal and indigenous to you. So be mindful of the path or the paths that these misbehaviors can put you on. Like, if you're on some kind of emotional kick, what's your best guess that that's going to take you? And consider whether you're creating social interactions that advance you or are they incrementally taking you down some path that brings you closer to a divorce, some unnecessary danger, or that business deal you want, or that promotion you want at your job. Just be thoughtful. Things, man, look, life, don't think for 1 minute that because life is cool for you now that we're all not one mistake away from being out on the street or in a graveyard or in just some horrible abyss. These things can lead to an emotional place that can be very, very uncomfortable for you, and God forbid, put you into some dark place where you're just so miserable and it's so difficult to climb out of. Okay? Like look, if all this shit I've been talking about the last 10, 15 minutes is not enough for you to make a change, and you just need something simple and straight to the point, here it is. Don't be a fucking asshole. Be kind. Have more faith in yourself. Show restraint. Will you fail at this? Yes, of course. But just try to get, little by little, get better at it. Fail a little bit less, a little bit less, and a little bit less, to where you're not even thinking about it. So do that for yourself. If this applies to you, do that for yourself. You got a friend that's like a loose cannon or needs some good counsel, I encourage you, if you think it helps, share this podcast with them. So that's it. Look, if you enjoy the show, I'm going to keep saying it over and over. If you enjoy the show, tell your friends, your family, coworkers, or whatever. Subscribe, like it, all that other shit, if that's around your heart. And, if you have ideas for the show, ideas for content, or you want to hear one of your personal dilemmas being touched on during one of the episodes, send it my way. Or if you want to do it privately, you know what? I'm even open to that. If you want to have just kind of a one-on-one thing. So once again, the email is info@themisconnected.com. That's info@themisconnected.com. The show is on all the platforms: iTunes, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, social media, Instagram. The Instagram handle is The Misconnected Podcast, I think. I should know this by now. Twitter, the Twitter handle is @The Misconnected letter P. All one word, @The Misconnected letter P. Also on Patreon. That's it. Have a good day or good evening, whatever time of day you're listening to this to, and be well.